Hey guys, it's the Chad, your C10 truck nerd. Well, by now most of you guys know that I'm always farting around with these 67 to 72 C10s, and the majority of them that I bring home have been sitting for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. And the downfall of that is when these things get parked or abandoned, nobody takes the time to drain the antifreeze, the oil, or take the fuel out of the tank. And if you don't know what can happen to gasoline after 10 or 20 years, it turns to varnish, and that's some of the nastiest stuff out there. I mean, it stains your skin, it burns your nostrils, it goes through and gums up your fuel lines, and potentially can even ruin the tank. So in today's video, I'm gonna go through and show you guys the easy, well, I don't know if there's an easy way, but I'm gonna show you how to take out an in-cab gas tank of a 67 to 72 GM truck. Well, the majority of 1967 to 72 GM trucks were equipped with an in-cab gas tank, which was about 20 gallons. Now, a lot of people called these suicide tanks or suicide cabs because they were afraid if you got in a collision, these would rupture, the cab would explode, and you would burn to death, which truly didn't happen very often. But it doesn't mean that they're safe, because with these tanks being in the cab, if you had an improper installation, improper venting, the wrong gas cap, or after 50 years you got little pinhole leaks in there, those gas fumes could make you not feel so good and potentially crash the truck then. So we're seeing a lot more guys go through and remove the in-tank and put it back in the bed. That way they can put speakers or just kind of avoid the smell of the gasoline. Well, I'm old school, so I'm not going to relocate this gas tank, but this truck has been sitting for over 20 years and it's got about a quarter tank of old varnish gas in there. So it's got to come out, one, to clean it, or two, just to replace it. So I'm going to go through and show you the steps to take one of these things out. It's pretty easy with just a handful of tools. So you're only going to need a handful of tools to pull one of these tanks out. First off being a couple of wrenches. You need a 1/2 and a 5/8. Then you'll need a ratchet with a 1/2 and a 13/16 socket, maybe an extension, a pair of pliers or vice grips, a sharp pocket knife or razor knife, some WD-40 or other penetrant, and most definitely a pair of rubber gloves. I told you this varnish gas is nasty. It'll stain your skin, it stinks forever, and you just don't want to get anything else in your eyes, so maybe a pair of safety glasses. So let's get in here. So the majority of 1967 to 72 GM trucks were equipped with a bench seat. In 67, 68, you could have had buddy buckets, and then in 69 to 72, you could have had bucket seats with a console, but like I said, the majority were a bench seat. Now these benches were held in by 8 1/2-inch bolts, 4 in the front and 4 in the rear. But a lot of these trucks, these seats and gas tanks haven't been out ever, so you're gonna have a heck of a time getting out. I knew for days and weeks that I was gonna be doing this, so I got some penetrant, laid underneath the cab, hit all of the seat bolts from the bottom, and I went ahead and did the seat belt bolts as well, just trying to make my life easy. You don't want to snap one of these off into the floor because they're a real pain to drill them out. So we're going to go through, start at the bottom, and we're going to start taking some of these 1/2-inch bolts out. So you'll need your 1/2-inch ratchet, or you can use a wrench. So with this 1971 GMC 1500 that we call Forest, this truck doesn't have any carpet or rubber in it anymore. I've already pulled that out. But if it does, all of the seat bolts should be on top of that. So the bolts itself, there'll be 2 in the front on the driver's side, 2 in the back, and same on the passenger side over there. So you'll get your 1/2-inch ratchet or wrench and go through and start breaking these loose. If it's still tight, maybe you need to hit it with some more penetrating oil. You just don't want to snap these off. So I'm going to go through and pull these front 2 off. Once I get the front 2 off and out, I'll go over to the passenger side, do those front 2, and then we're going to slide the seat to the forward position. That way we can access the back 4. Where'd that go? Where'd it go? Oh boy. So another thing, I dropped the bolt already. Another good thing to have is a magnet pan here. That way you don't drop stuff. Went in my pocket. Cool. Like I said, once you get the front 4 bolts out, then we'll go through, sit in the seat, and slide the seat forward. Hopefully it's not so rusted and bound up, but This way, if we slide it forward, then we can access the back floor. If you can get out. Yahtzee. Alrighty, so I've gone through and taken the 8 1/2-inch bolts out, and like I said, put them in a magnet pan, throw them in a cup, or even the ashtray. That way, when it's time to put the seat back in, you have some idea where the heck you put those things. Now, before we can go pulling this seat out, you have to remember you do have the seat belts in there that go through the back and butt rest, so we're gonna have to wedge those back through to the back of the cab, so when we pull the seat out, it's not hung up or fighting us. And you can pull one of these bench seats out by yourself. It's ideal to have 2 people because it's just awkward, and if you have nice shiny paint, you don't want to be scratching your doors or your rockers or any of that. I don't have my helpers today, so I'm gonna manhandle this thing, and when I say manhandle, I'm gonna like child handle it because I'm not very strong, but I've pulled several seats by myself and it's pretty awkward, so here we go. All right. And again, it's not a bad idea to wear rubber gloves because if this is a truck that's new to you, you have no idea what kind of critters are living in here. And you just don't want to stick your hands in weird places. I already ripped my rubber gloves, so maybe mechanics gloves would be a better start right now. That's gross. I can actually get my arm behind this seat now that it's in the forward position. And here we go. So the main thing is just pick up. You just got to get it up over the tranny hump and all that, and try not to scratch. It's going to make a ugly noise, I'm sure. There it is. Yeah, that's good on your paint, I promise. Ouch. Oh boy, that's nasty. It's also yeah, did it. So this is also a fun time to go through and see if you can find the original build sheet. So a lot of 67, 68s. It was back here on those spun coil springs there. Sometimes it would be on the bottom of the base there, but no such luck with Forrest. I was hoping I'd find one, and I have yet to find one myself, but one day I'll find it. That wasn't too bad. Alrighty, so now that we have the bench out, you can kind of see into the cab a little bit more and see how much rust or treasures you find in here. But if you see in this truck, and a lot of these trucks don't have it anymore, but the 67 to 72s could have this cardboard tank protector there. Most of them are disintegrated or somebody's pulled them out at some point in its life, but this one's still here, which is kind of cool. So I'm gonna try to save on it. That way I don't shred it up, but it just is a slip fit, just fits right around the tank itself. But it's kind of neat. So although most 67 to 72 GM trucks looked pretty much the same, there were some differences. There were a couple different gas tanks in this 6-year period, different sending units, different sizes of fuel lines, venting, and even gas caps. Now this 1971 GMC 1500, it has the EEC tank, which is the evaporative emissions control. It's just the way that they vented this tank versus using a vented gas cap between 67 to 70. So most 70 and a halfs and up had EEC, but I'll kind of show you the differences. They all remove the same. You just have a couple extra steps with the newer years here, but it's easy. All right, so here's a look at an EEC tank, and it looks very similar, 20 gallons-ish. The only difference that you'll see here is on the filler neck to the tank, you actually have this little rubber hose. And then on the passenger side, you have another one here that comes out of the top of the tank. It goes up into a loop into the pillar there, back down into another hard line, down through the floor, runs on the passenger frame rail, and then all the way to the front by the battery to a charcoal canister, where the the older trucks, you would just have the single fuel line going down. And then potentially a 72, you might have had 2 lines, one would have been a return. So depending on why you're in here pulling the tank off, kind of depends on how much stuff you can take out. Now this tank's definitely coming out to try to clean it or possibly replace it. I need to do a bunch of floor work, so I can take all these hard lines out with it, Whereas if you're just doing a quick swap, there's no need to take all this stuff out. You just kind of move it out of the way, throw the new one back in, and away you go. All right, so some quick nomenclature on these tanks. They were pretty much all held in the same. They had 7 half-inch bolts along with these little clamps there, 3 on the top, 4 on the bottom. Another reason why I told you guys to go through and lube your seatbelt bolts is down here you can see it's actually on top of the tank. So without removing these all the way, or at least a part of the way, you're not going to be able to get the tank up and over that. Here's your hard line. So again, if it's a non-EEC tank, you won't have this second line here. You just have your fuel line coming in. On an inline 6, it would have been 5/16. Fuel line, V8s were 3/8. This up here is your sending unit. This is your fuel gauge wire that goes up and down along the rocker panel there. So to pull these things out, we got to go through a couple steps. This hose here on the EECs need to be disconnected. I've never had any luck because they're so brittle, so I end up just snipping them or cutting them there. But I keep them, that way when I go to reinstall and put new lines in, I know exactly what length they were. But if we are going to go through and do a lot of floor work and this tank's going to be out for a while, there's no reason why you can't disconnect your hard lines underneath the cab. You can just snip the rubber lines down there too. That way it's a lot easier to pull one of these out. So let's get going. All right, to get started, the first thing I'm gonna do is go through and remove the fuel gauge wire, push it out of the way because we're gonna reuse that one day. Then I'm gonna need a couple tools. First one's gonna be my 5/8 inch wrench and my crescent wrench. So I went through and sprayed a little bit of penetrating oil right here on this brass fitting too. So hold one with your crescent wrench, then take your 5/8 inch and try to get the second one loose. You might have to give it a couple quick bumps there, but try not to spin it off or snap it. She's on there. There we go. And don't be afraid if you get a little varnishy gas coming out of there. It's going to be strong. This tank it's destroyed. So now I've got that off. I can kind of pull it or move it out of the way. Again, I am going to be taking the tank all the way out and leaving it out or replacing it. So I'm actually going to crawl underneath the truck and disconnect the other EEC line and then pull the grommets out of the floor and just pull the hard lines completely out. So underneath the Forest, I've got a little different configuration than most because it had saddle tanks in the bed, so I've got extra fuel lines pulling in there. But you can see as the fuel lines come in through those grommets and the floorboards, we just need to go through and cut the fuel lines. Like I said, I'm gonna put all new stuff in there because these things are gross. So you can use a razor knife if you got one of these cool little, that sounded cool. If you got one of these cool tube cutters, you can do that too. Just don't be surprised when the nasty fuel comes pouring out of here. Oh, that's brittle. Here it comes. Yeah, that's gross. Man, the smell is bad. Oh yeah, that's brittle. All right, cool. I don't even know why I wear gloves. They last me 2 seconds. Anyway, we'll go through and take these clamps loose. More than likely, I'm just gonna have to cut or pry the lines off. These are so brittle all the time. Oh, come on, Chad. Hey. Well, that's actually moving. That would be a miracle. Maybe not. And it's shredding, so more than likely I'm just gonna have to cut these because it's just disintegrating. So, all right, we'll do that instead. Done and done. Awesome. All right, so the next step, we're gonna go through and start pulling off these backer plates and the 1/2 inch bolts. The main reason I'm doing it this way in the EEC truck is because this vent line is actually held in by a couple grommets down at the bottom for the original tank bolts to be. So we'll pull these few off there, again, 1/2 inch. If you got an impact or something, man, this would go a whole lot faster. But these usually aren't too terribly hard to get out of there. I usually don't have to WD-40 the tank bolts itself, but we'll get these few off so we can get the EEC lines out of here. All right, once I get those pried off, there's one little clip holding it on the side of the tank too. I can go through and try to gently preserve these floor grommets, but more than likely they're probably just gonna be trashed when I pull them out. That way I can get the lines out. And yep, it's trashed. So we'll just go ahead and ruin it all the way. Once I do that, I can pull the whole hard line all the way out. Maybe. Grommet's still there. Oh, turkey. There we go. There's the EEC line. And then we can go through and do the same to the actual fuel line. Just try not to damage the fuel line because more than likely you can reuse it. And you can take it out the top or the bottom, either one. And that's that. All right, so next thing I'm gonna do is go through and take the remaining 5 tank bolts out. And I'm also gonna go through with my 13/16 and I'm gonna pull out the 2 seatbelt bolts too. That way we kind of get everything free. And we're on the home stretch as long as these break free. Again, using the impact, that's not a bad thing here either. All right, so we've got all 7 of the tank bolts out and got the 2 seat belts and their bolts out. Cinder's disconnected, EEC's disconnected. Again, probably the majority of you guys won't have that. Now we've got the fuel gauge disconnected, but one thing you do need to remember is to go through and take the wire out of these brackets. If you're gonna be replacing your tank, make sure you save those 2 because you'll need them for the new tank. Most of them don't come with it. So now we've got all of those out. We're ready to go through and start pulling the tank, except for we have the outside gasket or the escutcheon. I don't know. We need to get that out. So I'm gonna pull the wire, we'll move outside. All right, so here's the outside gasket or the escutcheon or whatever they want to call it here. But I'm not gonna try to save this. This thing is so brittle. I'm just gonna cut it out. But different gas tanks have different size filler necks and you have different grommets for different years too. So like the 71, 72s have this double rib here where most of them it was just a solid piece. So I'm gonna get a razor knife or a pocket knife. Don't cut your fingers off, please. And go around this first ring here, take the cap off once I've got that out and actually just pull the whole thing through the passenger side. So let's do that without bleeding. Yeah, but I'm kind of nervous to see what I find under this gasket because there is Bondo in here and I don't think it's going to be anything I'm going to be excited to find here. But hey, I've been wanting to work on this truck for a couple years now and this is going to help determine how much body work I've got to do. So oh, this thing is just brittle. Ooh, hope I didn't, nope. That's the good thing about having crappy paint. You just don't care. All right, so when I was actually going through trying to cut that ring off, it was so brittle, I just took a screwdriver and I was able to go around and shove that grommet all the way in there. So it popped all the way on the inside of the truck. So that was good. Every once in a while you get lucky, but I guess not lucky because this is all Bondo right here. So that kind of sucks, but I guess now we can go through and pull it. Say you just need to go through and take the cap off. Look at this. This is why you don't leave gas in there. This smells so bad. I hope we can save it. Alrighty, so this tank is ready to come out. Couple things to be aware of. Since this is an EEC tank, we do have an open line here since I snipped it. So when I go to pull this out, if I'm tipping this dude one way or the other, expect varnished gas to come shooting out of there, come shooting out of the sending unit, or if you're full and you tip it forward, just all sorts of bad stuff can happen right here. So this tank is free. It still may be locked in with some rust or 50 years of disgusting goo. So all you need to do is just gently pry. Again, gloves aren't a bad thing. But if you did leave your fuel lines in, this would be a big obstruction. You'd have to almost pull them out of the way, slide it over, up, and out the passenger door. Or you got to get that filler neck all the way through. So either way, I'm just going to take it out the passenger side by myself. Again, 2 people would be ideal in this situation. That's got more gas in it than I thought. Great. Oh, that's heavy. Whew. That sucks. Oh yeah, there's at least a quarter of tank. Oh, the smell. Crime in Italy. Oh gosh. I spilled myself. Just a little bit. Gross. All right, so the tank is out, and this is a great time, even if you're just replacing it or what you're doing, to inspect your floors. I was kind of hoping there would be a bunch of rust in here, so I just could put a whole floor in here. But it's just borderline. I don't know. It's just that one spot. But now you can see they have the padding here to keep the vibration down with the tank itself. But you cannot get your hand or inspect into these cab corners very often. So this is the time to go through with the vacuum, clean all that crud up. You had probably got 40 years of treasures down there. This side's a lot easier to access, but go through if you need to do any rust converting or prep, vacuum, do all these things while the tank's out. Or if you're going to relocate, then you can come up with a game plan of what you want to put back here. Alrighty folks, we have successfully removed the tank in this old C10, and I gotta tell you, it was pretty dang easy. Less than 2 hours here in the driveway with some hand tools. There are a few idiosyncrasies of the 6 years of the Action Line series, but they pretty much come out all the same. Now you guys that are going out and doing the relocates to the bed, you got a big hole in the back of the cab, so you gotta do something. Now there's a lot of companies that make filler panels, you just weld them in, but then you gotta do some paint correction. Or what I like to do is you can actually, since you're not using that old in-cab tank, cut the filler neck off, build you some bracketry from the backside to hold it steady, put a new grommet in there, put the cap back on, and you're done. No paint correction, and nobody knows you really did anything. But I would warn you, or one thing you probably should do is put a backer panel in there. That way you don't have a brain fart one day and pump 5 gallons of gas all over your subwoofers, or the next guy 10 years from now that buys your truck doesn't realize what you've done. That would just be, that'd be horrible. So I'm gonna go through and just put some duct tape over the hole for now, because I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do with the floors of forest here. I just don't want snow and rain. Like, snow and rain is gonna really matter to this old truck, but I'm gonna seal it up that way. If you guys haven't, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you aren't missing out on all this educational C10 content that I'm putting out, and keep up with this series, you know. I think I'm gonna go a little more in depth with the different tanks, you know, the different sending units, fuel lines. Maybe if you wanna go to a EEC tank to a vented tank or vice versa, I'll show you how to bypass the charcoal canister, the different types of gas caps that come here. I mean, there's a lot of nerdy stuff. I mean, that's why I'm the C10 truck nerd, because I know all this. I think it's fairly worthwhile information. I don't know. Well, I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching. A 1/2 and a 5/8 inch. 5/8 inch. You need an inch. You need an inch wrench. You'll need an open-end crescent. 7 to 72 GM truck. So the majority of 1967 to 72 GM truck. Dang. Trucks. Your name is the C10 truck nerd, and you keep saying trucks. I've been drinking or something.